Well, resting itself, I think, is really important for a number of reasons, some of which are really obvious um, in terms of physical activity when you're moving, exercising, being really athletic. It's good to give your muscles time to rest, your body time to rest, to recover, which I think technically it's actually called the recovery period for your body, and everyone's is kind of different for that. But when you have that recovery period, your athletic performance is enhanced. And if you don't have that recovery period, you actually can do more harm, and you can not progress in whatever practice it is, whether it's something super athletic like running or if it's a yoga practice.
With work life, there have been so many publications and so many people writing about how it's important to take time during your workday to rest. And, you can't work at 100% of your maximum capacity every day, all day. We know that that's bad for a number of reasons. As Sonja said, those periods of restfulness can actually strengthen when you are at work and when you are, your brain is in motion and when you are working towards a goal. So it's interesting that we continue to write about that and we continue to talk about it. There's some kind of disconnect between knowing that, we should take a break and being able to make ourselves do that.
Mindfulness is sort of knowing where you are without having to be told or see exactly where you are. And in our yoga practice, I call that mind-body connection, sort of looking forward but putting your foot behind you and getting to know where your body takes up space. And hopefully that is just sort of a bigger metaphor for someone being able to have the same sense of what kind of space they take up in a room, in their home, in their family, in their work environment. And it's not just about, I know where my foot's going to land when I stick it behind me and I'm not looking. It's about knowing that there's having spatial awareness, having perspective on something that you can't literally see, maybe. And that is such a gift. If you can really achieve that, you learn so much about yourself and how other people perceive you.
And I also think that mindfulness is useful in just how you're coming at your work, in terms of multitasking, which is another thing that people have published a lot on, but we still do it, and bringing your full presence to your work every day. It's really hard sometimes to come into a meeting and leave everything else at the door. That's really difficult to do. And similarly, one of the things that's most difficult for me in yoga as at work is doing that, is coming into the studio and leaving at the door the things that I was worrying about earlier in the day, and being preoccupied with other thoughts. But when I really look at how I've worked, if I spend 30 minutes in a meeting concentrating just on that, and really being fully present with the others in the room, we get so much more accomplished. So I think, that aspect of mindfulness is really useful in work as well.
I like goal setting a lot. I like making resolutions and things like that, especially on my birthday. I like doing that. But one thing that I think separates a goal from an intention, and both are really great. A goal to me is something that you set for your day or your week, or we want to make this amount of money in this month and that sort of thing, which they're really helpful. An intention is more like a principle to live your life by, and it's not something that you get to check off at the end of your week. It's sort of an ongoing thing, which is why, I want to lose X amount of pounds. That might be more like a goal than an intention, but it's a first step there. So an intention is a little bit more like a commitment of your whole self to achieve your goals in a specific way.
One of the things that I talk a lot about at National Arts Strategies and here in our office is that you're really responsible for the energy that you bring into the room, and you have to know that that energy has an effect on everybody around you in the space that you share. And that's not to say that you won't have bad days and you won't feel stress, and that you should just try to suppress those things and be completely fake about it. It is really important to honor those things that you're feeling. But, also recognize that everybody's stressed, and, everybody is having to share this space for 40 hours or more a week, and having, some experiences of the challenge of balancing work and family life and those kinds of things. So I think it's really important to, throughout all of that, have, have this intention of collegiality and making it a positive work environment for everyone.
You have to know where your limitations are, which is what we try to practice in yoga too. You have to know, okay, this is where I can stretch and this is where I can't stretch. So if you cannot stretch and you cannot go into the meeting, then you cannot go into the meeting. And you have to own that. You have to be authentic.
And I think too, if your intention is to create a really positive working environment for everybody in your organization, I think it's sort of empowering to think that, I'm feeling the stress, and I'm going to be honest about it with my coworkers and say, hey, this is kind of not my best day ever. But controlling it with breathing, just kind of slow, counting your breaths in and out, controlling it with getting some fresh air and those little techniques that you can use. It is really empowering, actually, to think, I'm not being dishonest about how I'm feeling, but I'm still going to work towards my intention of creating this really productive and, great place to work. And I'm able to do that even despite these stressful things.
You had mentioned that stress it's not a terrible, terrible thing. It's a part of our biology and being human. I think stress really becomes a hazard, really, when it's disproportionate to what's actually happening.
Yeah.
And that is when it becomes a bigger and bigger and bigger problem, and it just keeps growing. And that's why taking a step back, going back to the resting, taking a moment, taking a few breaths, which, by the way, when you hyperventilate or when you have panic attacks, that's total loss of your breath. I mean, that's you lost control over that. So if you can gain that back and collect yourself and get a little bit of perspective on what's actually in front of you, I think that's when you can minimize that gap between what's actually happening and what you feel like is happening.
Keeps it from spiraling out of control.